Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Mike Minds for Maps. Today's edition, streaming live to you from Nantucket, a little island 30 miles off the coast of Massachusetts in the United States. We will not be running maps today. We will be farming for Oni Goroshi and talking about this therapy term, the repetition compulsion. If this is your first time joining us, this stream is twofold. We play lots of Path of Exile and we talk about psychotherapy because there's a lot of principles of psychotherapy that are clearly shown in Path of Exile. So today I want to share the first one with all of you, and that is the concept of the repetition compulsion. And one of the best ways of showing you the repetition compulsion on Path of Exile is farming for Onigoroshi, a sword that can only drop in the first and sort of tutorial level of Path of Exile. And it's a very rare drop. It got nerfed a little bit in terms of level a while back, but the drop rate went much higher. So we're going to start with that. I've got 3 characters set up. As you can see, one is a level 5, one's a level 7, one's a level 7. They've all been farming for Onigoroshi since before level 1. And that means that I've literally done hundreds of runs of this and I have had no success. And we're going to do some more and probably have no success either. What this has to do with the repetition compulsion therapy is that a lot of times people come to therapy after having repeated the same behaviors over and over again, hoping for different results. So you may have heard the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. There's truth to that, but it's also a little bit more complicated than that, because a lot of times, as opposed to now when I'm farming Onigoroshi, I'm aware that the chances of getting it this particular time are pretty slim, but I'm going to keep doing it anyway, and I'm conscious of it. The repetition compulsion, by contrast, is something that we often do in our personal lives over and over again, but not knowing we're doing it. So maybe it shows up in your life in terms of a compulsive behavior that you can't stop doing, whether it be drinking or using drugs or self-harm. Or maybe it's a repetition of the sort of choice of person you find yourself in a relationship with. And you can, so this is Hillick. This is the guy that hopefully at some point will show up being a lot harder to kill than this guy is.
I have nothing more to give.
So this guy is not going to drop any Goroshi. Anyway, so then I switch, log out, go to the next character, and start all over again. So as I was saying, the repetition compulsion isn't something that you're usually conscious of. You may be aware of the behavior and that you keep doing it and you don't want to do it, or the relationship problem and you keep doing it and wonder, why is it that I keep looking for that same person or doing that same thing and it just doesn't net me any of the results? Well, the answer, at least if you're a psychodynamic psychotherapist like me, is that you're trying to work out, probably unconsciously or preconsciously, something that you really aren't totally aware of. So, for example, maybe you have a habit of looking to date people and the guys you date are really emotionally unavailable. And no matter what happens in the crowded room, you will be picking the guy that is totally a brick. And you've noticed that you keep dating bricks. And so then you get to a point where you say, okay, either there's nothing but men or bricks in the world, or I have bad luck, or there might be something going on that I'm not aware of. Now, a lot of times people pick the first or second choice, in which case they end up, unfortunately, this is not an Goroshi drop either. Unfortunately, people sometimes pick that sort of unavailable partner and then decide, hey, it's really not me, it's really just that men are scum. Or they say, yeah, it's really not me, it's just I have bad luck. There may be good men out there, but I can't find them, but maybe next time I will. But every once in a while, after you've had one too many horrible dates or horrible relationships or one too many drinks or one too many something, you suddenly think, hey, maybe the problem is me. Maybe it's not that I've got bad luck or that I'm a victim. Maybe I'm doing something that I don't know about. Now, if you don't believe there's such a thing as an unconscious, you should, just stop watching this stream right now, because chances are I'm not going to get Goroshi, and chances are you're not going to find what I have to say useful. But if you do think it's possible that there is an unconscious, and you do think it's possible that maybe your life has some pieces of it that are not quite understood or recognized by you, then maybe the repetition compulsion as a concept might be something that you can find useful. So I should mention at this time that if you're watching and you're tuning into Twitch, you're always welcome to say hi in chat, and if you have questions about anything Path of Exile or psychotherapy, I'll be happy to talk with you about it. Chances are I'll be much more helpful with the psychotherapy part than with the Path of Exile part. With that being said, one of the reasons people end up coming to therapy is they sometimes come to the third conclusion, which is, okay, I might be missing something. I might not be conscious of something. And unfortunately, no Goroshi is so, some portal scrolls, never a bad thing. All right, so when people do go to therapy, in particular psychodynamic psychotherapy, they go for a specific reason, which is that they do believe that there is something about the unconscious at work. And that's what psychodynamic psychotherapy really means. Psychodynamic is basically a fancy way of saying that we believe there are unconscious forces that are dynamic forces at work in your mind that, if left unconscious, will propel you forward through a life that you may not exactly want to be propelled forward. And that in order to change your life, you need to become conscious of what these dynamic forces are. And so this brings us back to the repetition compulsion, which is it's an example of one of those dynamic forces that is unconsciously propelling you forward through your life. And so you're making choices that you think are, fully your choices and fully your agency, but in fact, you're making choices based out of unconscious ideas and unconscious projections and fantasies and all that stuff. So it's not, you're not as free as you could be. And one of the things about becoming more conscious of yourself is that you don't necessarily become more comfortable, but you do become more free in terms of making decisions that are more consciously aware decisions. So psychodynamic theory is really all about helping restore your agency to yourself and becoming more aware of your unconscious impulses. Psychodynamic therapy is not about learning to feel better or being more comfortable. It's really more about learning more about who you are and accepting who you are. And so here's another Hillock that's not going to drop anything good.
I have nothing more to give.
So as you can see, I've gone through a whole bunch of these over and over again and have gotten the same result. Now, one of the reasons people often go in therapy and want to work on the repetition compulsion is similar to what I'm doing in Passive Exile. And that is that at a certain point, running this particular scenario over and over again is really freaking boring. Like, how many drowned characters can you get? How many of these little sand shooters? By the way, what are these anyway? They're not crabs. They're not lobsters. They're just gross. But anyway, the point is that after a certain time, this gets really boring. You can see that my level bar is not really going up very much, so I'm not getting a lot of experience from this. Nothing really cool is dropping. I'm just killing the same weird little crustacean things over and over again. And so when people go to therapy, a lot of times what they're doing is saying, hey, I'm wondering if it's worth it to keep doing this the same way. I wonder if my life is really worth it living it the way I'm living it. And the thing about that is it's really a decision and a choice that only you can make. Only you can decide when you're ready to change things. Only you can decide when you've, had enough. So I'm going to keep farming for Goroshi for a while. The average is between 8 and 10 hours. And I can tolerate doing this between 8 and 10 hours because I don't do it all at once. I take breaks. I do other things. I might run some other maps. But imagine if what you're doing is you're living life. And it's not about 8 to 10 hours. It's about your life. And that you've spent years trying to get over feeling depressed and not knowing how to do that. Or that you've been trying to find that special someone for 20 years and you just feel like you're alone and you're destined. Or you've tried so many different regimens of drinking and drugs and smoking pot and nicotine and hoping that you're going to find just the right combination. That's a lot more than 8 to 10 hours. And it can get much more tedious than killing a bunch of drowned zombies. So when that happens, if you're lucky, you can notice the repetition compulsion. Because you're also not stopping. You're also not saying, hey, you know what? I just can't drink in safety, or hey, I just can't, have a relationship. If it was that simple, we'd just stop doing whatever the thing was, and then we'd be happier, or at least we would be less compulsive. No, Hilla. No, So I'm going to stop for a second here, and I am going to be back in a minute. Farming only Goroshi more, but I want to check out Twitch to make sure it's running and to make sure that I'm not ignoring any of your chats. So be right back.